Jeju Island, one of the 7 wonders of the world with 3 UNESCO heritage sites. Every year, this beautiful island brings together hundreds of government officials, high-profile figures, and opinion leaders from all over the world for the Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity. At the 14th edition of the forum, participants discussed ways to build co-prosperity in Asia and the world under the theme Asia Towards Resilient Peace for Cooperation and Integration. To offer a closer glimpse of this multilateral dialogue, we are broadcasting from Jeju Island this week, where I'm your host, Panita Bajaj. With panelist Todd Sample, we are going to talk about ways to build prosperity in Asia from an economic perspective. Hello and welcome once again to Jeju Island, continuing on our Jeju Forum Special.
For this episode, we're going to be focusing on co-prosperity between Korea and Asia from an economic perspective. So, what's our topic this week?
This week, we are delving deeper into the economic accomplishments of President Moon Jae-in administration's new Southern policy. So let's get into it and step into
The Chamber.
민지 시대와 권위주의 체제 지난 19차 회의에서 천명한 신남방정책은 아세안과 함께 번영하겠다는 한국의 강력한 의지 표명입니다.
We should, continue with our spirit of New Southern policy stronger than ever. We need to, bolster our economic cooperation to mitigate the effect of the U.S.-China trade war and increasingly rising global protectionism.
Welcome to the Chamber. As always, we have Todd Sample here in the studio. And of course, we are welcoming Ambassador Lee Hyuk, Secretary General of the ASEAN-Korea Centre. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course, we are here to delve deeper into one of the hottest economic issues surrounding Korea. So let's get straight to it. I mean, we know that Secretary General Lee, you took part in the session, Economic Aspects of New Southern Policy Achievement and Challenges at this year's Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity. So would you want to share with our viewers what you discussed during your speech?
We exchanged views on how best to implement the spirit of New Southern policy, which was announced by President Moon Jae-in about 2 years ago. Actually, the New Southern policy is one of the most important signature foreign policy initiatives in the Moon Jae-in administration. So it's aimed at pushing forward our relations with the 10 ASEAN member states into a new height. And we also discussed the challenges and opportunities in pushing forward that initiative.
Sure. So as you say, it's crucial. It's a very important step in Moon Jae-in's administration, and a lot of high hopes are into this policy as well. Well, can you explain exactly what is this New Southern policy?
Well, the New Southern policy, as I just have mentioned, is aims to promote our cooperation exchanges with 10 ASEAN member states and India. That initiative consists of three pillars, actually: prosperity, people, and peace. We aim to promote enduring peace on the Korean Peninsula and in this region through this policy, and we also pursue shared prosperity through vigorous cooperation among Korea, ASEAN member states, and India. And we also try to promote the people-to-people and cultural exchanges in a vigorous manner. But those three pillars are very much closely connected with each other. So without peace, we cannot achieve lasting prosperity. And without the vigorous people-to-people exchanges, we cannot, achieve economic cooperation and partnership. So those three pillars are very much interconnected. The recent very fast-changing economic and security dynamics in the globally and regionally, actually. So I think the need for our country to further promote and deepen relations with ASEAN countries and India has become more important because we cannot depend solely upon the major powers.
Right.
Now, actually, we have 3 or 4 major powers probably: the United States, China, and Japan. Those major powers are competing against each other, and we are, in some aspects, are competing with those countries. On the economic front, Japan and China are not only partners, but became competitors. So we have to look to ASEAN nations and India for creating and strengthening partnership in those economic areas. So I think there is an ample potential for us to make a solid economic partnership in the future.
So in a nutshell, you said the New Southern policy is aimed at nurturing enhanced cooperation between Korea and the ASEAN nations plus India. Yeah, right. So from the ASEAN countries and India's perspective, how do they view a potential partnership in this light with Korea?
I think they regard Korea as a very important partners, not only in economic areas, but also on other fronts, actually. So Korea actually overcame the war and abject poverty and moved forward to become a very industrialized democracy. In that sense, Korea is a role model for them to emulate. I think that's why ASEAN countries and India, even India as well, feel more familiar, more friendly to Korea than to major countries such as Japan and China. Japan has ruled almost all the ASEAN nations during the Second World War. And China has becoming more and more assertive and has wanted to exert more influence over the ASEAN countries. So in that sense, Korea has no challenging or sensitive diplomatic, historic, and security issues between ASEAN nations and India. So that's why we can work together better than other major countries in pursuing our goal of shared prosperity.
And it seems like a quite smart business move for all these nations. And it seems like the 10 ASEAN nations and India are quite crucial factors of the new Southern policy. Do you think these countries have the potential to actually widen Korea's influence, their diplomatic horizons, and kind of curb reliance on the neighboring countries in the Northeast Asian nations or the U.S.?
Absolutely so. I think, even on the diplomatic front, I think we need to nurture our partnership with ASEAN nations and India. For example, on the issue of peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and surrounding issue of North Korea's nuclear ambition, the four major powers and Korea have been engaged in resolving this issue for decades. But the problem remains unsolved. But I think under these circumstances, the ASEAN nations and India, who are not a direct party to the North Korean nuclear issue, can serve as an honest facilitator. The 2 rounds of Trump-Kim Jong-un summit was held in Singapore and Hanoi, the ASEAN member states. Both of them are ASEAN member states. So I think we will see the increasing role of the ASEAN nations and India to play in addressing the issue of peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. So we have to really encourage them to do that role.
So we're seeing in some of the ASEAN nations economic results that Korea used to see 5 or 6 or 7% economic growth annually, and of course Korean companies and Korea is a big part of that economic growth. So from that perspective, what kind of economic cooperation already exists between Korea and ASEAN and India?
Korea has a big Hyundai automobile company has a big manufacturing assembly line in India, actually, which produces hundreds of thousands of cars and which are imported to neighboring countries such as ASEAN nations. But given the huge potential of our economic partnership, the current economic relationship is very minimal. In comparison with Korea's partnership with ASEAN nations. Last year, the trade volume between Korea and India reached $20 billion, which is quite small actually in comparison with other ASEAN nations such as Vietnam. So it means that we have all the more potentials for further growth.
So I know that you were also former ambassador to Vietnam. So I'm aware that Korea is maybe perhaps still the largest foreign investing country in Vietnam, and now Myanmar and Laos is the same. So already that kind of economic cooperation is taking place and growing. So Korea is still a very important partner for these growing economies.
I think so. I was the ambassador to Vietnam until last year. And as you just mentioned, Korea has surpassed Japan in 2014 to become the largest investor to Vietnam. This is almost miraculous. We established diplomatic relations in 1992. Wow, so during a very short period of time, Korea has become the largest foreign investor to Vietnam. And to Vietnam, Korea is the second largest trading partner. Korea exports more to Vietnam than to Japan. Samsung smartphone, which is manufactured in 2 factories in the suburbs of Hanoi, accounts for almost more than 20% of Vietnam's total export. That means that Korean economic presence has been making a great contribution to the economic growth of Vietnam.
Okay, and the other Asian countries are also potential markets for that.
In other Asian countries, it's less so, But I think there are huge potentials for Korea and other ASEAN nations to further, develop the economic partnership.
Well, it seems like you've got a very positive view on this new policy because it's extremely beneficial to not only Korea, but for these 10 ASEAN countries as well. Now, President Moon Jae-in has visited a number of these nations during his term here in office to promote the new Southern policy, as you said, to deepen Korea's ties within these nations as well. So while we're on this topic, let's take a look at how it progressed over the years.
The Moon Jae-in administration's new Southern policy aims to elevate Korea's ties with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and with India, and generally expand the nation's diplomatic horizons. To achieve those goals, President Moon has visited a number of ASEAN countries plus India since he took office.
사람과 사람, 마음과 마음이 이어지는 사람 공동체. 안보 협력을 통해 아시아 평화에 기여하는 평화 공동체, 호혜적 경제 협력을 통해 함께 잘 사는 상생 번영 공동체를 함께 만들어가기를 희망합니다.
At the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit in 2017, President Moon announced what he called the 3 Ps: people-oriented, peace, and prosperity, the core vision of the new Southern policy. Then, in March the following year, President Moon paid a state visit to Vietnam, one of the VIP countries of ASEAN, named after the first letters of Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines.
베트남은 한국에게 특별한 나라이고 우리 정부가 역점을 두고 있는 신남방 정책의 핵심 파트너입니다.
There, he held a summit with Vietnamese President Tran Dai Quang and then announced a joint declaration to usher in a new 25 years of history between Korea and Vietnam. The two leaders also vowed to bolster their countries' bilateral ties and reach a trade volume of $100 billion by 2020. A few months later, in July 2018, President Moon embarked on a 6-day tour of India and Singapore to promote the new Southern policy. With Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Moon announced the shared vision for people, prosperity, peace, and the future to highlight a new direction for Korea-India cooperation, the first of its kind to be adopted by the two countries. Then, in Singapore, the Korean president emphasized not only economic cooperation between Korea and ASEAN, but also the peace and prosperity they could usher in together.
아세안과 한국은 서로에게 부족한 것을 채우고 서로에게 이득이 되는 관계입니다. 평화와 공동 번영의 미래를 열어갈 최적의 동반자라 할 수 있습니다.
Then, in September 2018, Indonesian President Joko Widodo made a reciprocal visit to Korea and held further discussions with President Moon on strengthening bilateral ties. President Moon embarked on his first overseas trip of 2019 in March to 3 countries in ASEAN: Brunei, Malaysia, and Cambodia.
국왕님의 해안과 통찰력을 바탕으로 한 비전 2035와 한국의 신남방 정책이 만나 양국 발전의 시너지 효과를 만들 수 있을 것입니다.
The new Southern policy is a sign of Korea's strong commitment to mutual prosperity with ASEAN. As one of the so-called new 4 major policies, it will help Korea find a breakthrough so it can thrive together with ASEAN and India.
So as you said, this new Southern policy was announced 2 years ago, back in 2017. And it's been 2 years, so could we have seen economic accomplishments that it has yielded?
In 2018, our two-way trade volume between Korea and ASEAN reached 160 billion US dollars, which is increase of more than $10 billion over the previous year, actually. And our investment to ASEAN nations has increased also very rapidly. In terms of people-to-people exchanges, the two-way visits between the peoples of Korea and ASEAN actually exceeded 10 million people. It reached 11 million, which is quite a phenomenal number, actually. So in the area of economic partnership and cooperation and people-to-people exchanges, we are really becoming interdependent on each other and even indispensable to each other. So we are a very close economic partners. We cannot separate from, which cannot separate from each other. Building on this achievement, we can further upgrade our partnership to a new height in the years to come.
Okay, so on the topic of building, infrastructure is also one of the areas that now Korea is looking into in terms of the ASEAN market. So could you perhaps elaborate on some of the opportunities in that area?
Well, I think you know very well that Korean infrastructure companies, building companies, are very competitive. They have ample experiences and state-of-the-art technology, and also shining achievements in many areas, ranging from Africa, the Middle East, and to Southeast Asian countries. In 2018, the amount of our infrastructure contract with ASEAN nations reached $20 billion already. So I think and I'm sure that it will grow further into the future.
Well, are there more areas where we can see this ample potential that we keep talking about, whether it's aside from infrastructure, trade, and things like that?
I think there are quite a few other areas, such as startups and entertainment industry, in which Korea has quite a strong competitiveness, and also biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and which is part of Industry 4.0.
Well, as you said, the struggle between the four powers and Korea and the ASEAN nations have been going on for decades and decades. But whether this year will be a pivotal year or not, it's quite hopeful, as it is marking the 30th anniversary of the Korea-ASEAN ties. So before we wrap up, do you have your vision on what this new Southern policy can bring forward for Korea, or whether it's the ASEAN nations plus India?
I think the new Southern policy envisions a community between Korea and ASEAN plus India, actually, with full of economic cooperation and people-to-people exchanges. Given the complementarity between Korea and ASEAN nations plus India, I think the economic cooperation and partnership will grow much more into the future, actually. And so in this sense, I'm quite optimistic about the future relations between Korea and ASEAN plus India. I think we should not be complacent about the current, strong economic ties with ASEAN and India.
Sure. Yeah, as you said, there's a lot of work to be done. Hopefully we can see more areas where we can fill in the blanks or we can accomplish more of these goals that we have set. Well, today on The Chamber, we talked about the economic accomplishments and the forecast ahead of President Moon Jae-in's new Southern policy. Well, we can't help but anticipate the day Korea completes its new economic map, so to say, for the Korean Peninsula, of course, driven by continuous cooperation with the ASEAN nations plus India. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Please feel free to join us on social media. If you have any questions or concerns regarding Korea's economy, feel free to drop it in our social media. We'll see you guys next time on The Chamber, same time, same place. Thank you for joining us.